So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We probably will have other people jumping on as they're able to, hopefully. Um, my name is Jean Walsh. I see some new names, and so welcome. It's good to meet you. I am with ASABE and have been a standards administrator here for coming up on 9 years now. And I was asked to discuss the standardization process, trying to make it understandable to those of you who may be interested in developing a standard. So I will do my best. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to just jump in there with them. This is just very informal. We are recording it, and we have a YouTube channel that we are putting all the PRS trainings on. So once that gets up there, I will make sure that I post that information to everyone. So let's get started. So the big question is, why are standards needed? And this is a great picture that Scott likes to use, and I really like it because it shows a Roman road, and if you notice where the arrow is pointing, there are blocks in the center. Well, those blocks are spaced in a standardized position so the chariots can go through there, but also people can walk across without getting into wet or mud. But the whole idea is that standards will create order from chaos. And at ASABE, we recognize that there are more technical reasons for standardization, from interchangeability of equipment and products to improving personal safety on one hand. And then also standards are established to establish, performance criteria and a common basis for testing materials and uniform methods, and at ASABE also to share data. The American National Standards Institute, also known as ANSI, is really important to ASABE. ANSI is a non-governmental organization that is recognized by the federal government for the support of consensus-based standards development. ANSI standards are often the basis for U.S. government regulation, and ANSI also provides support and communication to and between U.S. standards development organizations, ASABE being one of them. And it is a conduit between U.S. standards development and ISO, the International Organization of Standards, which we also participate in. Now, ANSI is important in that it accredits us, and that gives us a little more gravitas with our standards. It shows that they have been certified by ANSI as having followed our standards development process that aligns with their requirements. And it more or less validates that the requirements that you see in this little triangle of due process, openness, balance, and consensus have been followed. The due process is the procedures themselves that we follow. And we created those procedures so that they aligned with the requirements that ANSI says, will support this open process. And the openness part is the fact that anyone can participate in the standards development, whether they are ASABE members or not. We do encourage them to be ASABE members, but also as part of the ANSI process, any standards that developers wish to be endorsed by ANSI are published in a weekly newsletter called ANSI Standards Action. And anyone in the country who sees that is welcome to contact us and ask about that standard and participate in the development. They can get a copy of a standard in process, and they can provide comments on that do have to be addressed. The balance section is the balance of interest areas being represented by the members on the committee. So in every committee, we have voting and non-voting members. And the voting members, we need to be very careful to make sure that there are not an overwhelming majority of people representing, for example, industry or academia, which are our two main areas. So we like to find out where our members are involved in their lives. Some people may be industry, but might be specifically with safety. A lot of people involved in academia are also involved in research. So I'm able to more or less help spread the, shall we say, the balance of interest areas out across your various hats you wear. We have a lot of people who also work with extensions, and that's another area, or just general interest. You know, we have someone who comes to us, say through the standards action, and wants to participate. They may just be interested in the topic. They don't have to have any specific area that they represent, and that's allowed too. And then the consensus means not that everyone agrees, but that in general, what has been put down on paper is acceptable to the majority of the group. There can be a standard that is published with someone who disagrees with something that's in there. They don't agree with it fully. And we have a process that we go through for that. So we'll be talking about that a little down the road. So now I'm going to go through the ASABE process just very generally. To start with, if you are interested in a topic and you see that there is a need for that topic to be addressed, that's the first step. Identify the need. And anyone can do that. The man down the street can do that. An ISO or an ANSI member can do that. An ASABE member can do that. Anyone can bring us the need. And it, depending on where the need comes from, we may go to one of the technical committees and ask for people to assist with that. So to start with, you identify a need, and we have what we call a project proposal form. It's a form with directions on how to fill it out that a person bringing this need to us can fill out, and we will help them. And then we would present that project proposal to the oversight committee. So every community in ASABE, whether it's PRS, your community, PAFS, Plants, Animals, Facility Systems, NRES, Natural Resources and Environmental Systems, MS, Machinery Systems, et cetera, every technical community has a standards oversight committee. And that committee, generally the O3 committee, is responsible for looking at the project proposal form and making sure that the proposal makes sense. You have to have a reason why you want to start a standard, and I clearly identify the need. And there is a 30-day ballot on that to the oversight committee. And over here on the edge, you'll see that I have a little asterisk with numerical requirements must be met and comments addressed. That's part of the procedures that are approved by ANSI. And so here is a link to the ASABE procedures should you like to follow that later on. So next, once the oversight committee has approved your project, that's when the person who identified the need up here and the group of people that they hopefully discussed it with start working on the drafting of the document itself. the plan for how they want it put together, pulled together, where the information is coming from, who's bringing the information in. A draft may be divided into parts, and people who are interested may each take a part and draft their section of the text. And then you all come together and discuss it and try to give it one voice. That's oftentimes a common practice. And when the drafting is completed, then it comes to me, and I would ballot that to the committee for a 30-day ballot, during which time the full committee, not just the drafting team, but the full committee gets to decide, do they support this? Does this look good? Are there comments? Are there areas that they feel need to be fleshed out a little bit? After the 30-day ballot, then the comments that were submitted go back to the project leader and the drafting team, and they look at the comments and decide what the resolutions are. Oftentimes, the comments are going to be clarifying. Clarify this section. I didn't quite understand what you meant by it. Maybe you can change these words around. Sometimes the comments are going to be, I checked your formula and it was not correct. Here is a correct formula, which you, of course, need to verify. Some of the comments may be, have you looked at this bit of information to see if it is helpful and supportive? So we're depending on the experts in your committee to kind of flesh out what you're doing and to verify the information. So once the comments have been addressed and approved by the commenters, then we have what's called the final procedural approval process, which means that the results, all of the results from your project, which will be your consensus body, your roster of people who were voting, it's going to be your project proposal form, it's going to be your draft, it's going to be the ballot summary from the ballot that you had that approved your project. It's going to be any comments that were resolved in any subsequent balloting, so that we send that back to the oversight committee. So if you see, we started out up here where they approved your process to start. And then down here at the end, they look to see that you did all of the things that you were supposed to do. And part of that is to verify that the staff did everything they were supposed to do. We have to record each step, and it's a very structured recording that we need to do. And again, I want to point out here is a link to our standardization procedures, which are also found on our website. And then the final step is going to be the publication, which the ASABE staff takes care of. Now you see these little ANSI markers here on the side. So at various steps, let me back up a moment. You have two choices when you're starting a new project. Your project can either be an ASABE standard or it can be an ANSI endorsed standard. If it's an ASABE standard, we don't have anything to do with ANSI as far as we follow our process, which is exactly the same. But with ANSI, there are a few extra steps that we have to do, such as the first one, we have to fill out a form that gets sent into ANSI and tells them to publish this in their weekly newsletter. And then there is a 30-day public review period once it's published. And that allows anyone in the world, or at least in the country, who sees this and is interested to contact us in that 30 days. When we get down to the actual ballot to the committee, it's a 45-day ballot of periodic or of public review. So the standards ballot to the committee is 30 days. And then because there's always a 2-week lag, there's another 30 days of waiting to see if anyone from the public contacts staff and requests a copy. So it just slows the process down a little bit. At the very end, as we said, the Oversight Committee will review the process that was taken. We'll look at all the documentation and verify against our procedures that we followed the process that was laid out. Once we do that, we submit a form again to ANSI to state that this has all been verified and is appropriate. When they say we're going to give you our endorsement or approval, that's when we can go to publication. So if we're looking at producing a standard without ANSI endorsement, if you wanted to know approximately how long, I would guesstimate probably 4 to 6 months if you have all of your information pulled together and you meet with your team aggressively to move through your drafting and your comment resolution process. If you're talking ANSI, then we're talking 6 to 12 months, simply because if you have to have a second ballot, that's another 2-month wait while you have the 30-day ballot and then the 30 days of public review. So basically, it's a similar process, a few extra steps in ANSI, but it depends on the process that will affect how long it takes to get through. Any questions yet? Okay, good. So,
Jean,
yep.
I want to jump in and add a few comments.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So this whole process, it is something similar to writing a technical paper. The first item, the project proposal form, that is just a single page thing. So maybe say with some of the things we want to expand means it will be just a 2-page. So that is quite easy. And the second step, it quickly goes through the committee, and they will be saying that yes, you proceed with the standards. And the third stage, the drafting, it can be single author or it can be a team of author, as Jean was telling. So that was the thing. And then this addressing comments is something like, say, submitting to the editor, and then the reviewers will be giving the comments. So here, mostly all the comments made by the say the reviewers, our folks only, everything should be meticulously addressed. We usually we should not leave any comments, say, unaddressed. So everything should be addressed, and ASAB people, they will be checking whether every point has been addressed. In the case of regular paper, sometimes we may have a rebuttal and all, but here everything should be properly addressed. And then this approval and all, after this it will go smooth and it will be automatic. So yeah, that is the thing. This PPF and all, it is not a big thing, it is a small document. Quickly we can able to put that thing forth, and the process will be easy. Yeah, I am done.
Yes. Thank you, Agathi. And I just want to pull that up very quickly.
Yeah.
I like how you related that to the drafting process. So here, let me see. Got the project proposal form is right here. It's national adoption right here. And it is a downloadable version so that you can mark it up. Let's see, it's opening up in another screen. I'll pull it over here in a second.
And identifying the need is something related to our, say, a research gap. It is the way we address a research gap, and with novel methods, it is a similar procedure here as well. Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So as Agathi was saying, this is just a 1-page.
Yeah.
Just fill in the blanks, and we even have on the website a document that is directions. What should you put in each space? Your title and your rationale. That's very important. Why are you doing it? That's your need. And then the scope of the standard. What is it going to cover? And again, you fill that out the best you can, and you send that to me, and I take it from there and work with you on that. So thank you for bringing that up. Let me just pull that down here. So again, any further questions? I think Agathi did a wonderful job of relating it to something that you may be more familiar with. Thank you. Okay, so what I did as we move forward, and I'm going to be putting this PowerPoint presentation up as well, because I think it might be good for you to refer back to it. You see that I have project lead actions are noted in black, and the staff actions are noted in white. I wanted it to be very stark what the project leader and the drafting team are responsible for, and then what the staff takes care of for you. The staff does a lot of support in the background for getting a standard done. And my job is basically to lead you by the hand if necessary. Some of you have experience in putting together a standard, and some of you don't, and that's perfectly fine. All we need you to do is come to us with your need, and then we can walk you. I can help you fill out the forms, etc. Not a problem. I can even help you build your team of experts if needed. So let's look first at the project lead action. So this is the person who says, I really think we need to do a standard on widgets. So they've identified the need. Why do we need widgets? Because they're widgety. So you're going to take this discussion to your committee members. So go to the people who have a similar area of expertise. Could just be a few colleagues. It could be your PRS committee, and bring it up and say, hey, you know, I really noticed that we need a standard on widgets, and I was wondering if people will help me with that. Here's my idea of why we need it and what I would like to do. And so that's your discussion point. And then you bring it to start gathering your team by finding out who wants to join you. So you're going to gather your group, find that out. You're going to start putting together an outline, maybe talking to them a little bit, getting in your head where you're going with this. And you're going to contact the ASABE staff for support and direction. And my direction is going to be, great, I fully support helping you with a project for widgets. You're going to need a project proposal form. And here in the slide deck, I have a link to that project proposal form, which we just looked at, and the directions also on the same page. So that's what you're going to need to do, and then fill out that form. My job, going to help you get the project proposal form and fill it out, and then you give it to me, and then I take over. You can start working with your drafting team. You can start meeting with them. You can be brainstorming. You can be gathering data. You can still be working in the background. And while that's happening, I'm going to go to that 03 committee with that ballot, and I'm going to notify the project leader then what happens after the ballot. Most likely it's going to be approved. I think there's only been, in my 9 years here, I think there may be 2 projects that were not approved. And one was because it just was not seen as needed. It was more of a, I think it was more of a school project. Someone was trying to get a student to put a project together, and that did not fit. And that was pretty obvious to them when they saw their project proposal form. Anyway, so the response by the project, so the notification is going to go out to the project lead regarding the ballot outcome. And if the 03 members, any of them have a comment, which is again very rare, then they may we'll send that to the project lead. The project lead answers it, and we satisfy that. If it's ANSI, I will have opened up that public review period. And basically, you can't really do any other balloting until that public review is closed. But you can start your drafting. Once this is approved, you've hopefully used that 30 days to start gathering your information. And then we do provide a standards template that will walk you through how to format your project, your standard. And that also is found on that National Standards page online. And it talks about what font you use and how many spaces you put in, how to put formulas, how to separate your areas, your required areas of references and keywords and definitions, etc. And any questions, you just come right to me, because that's my job, is to help walk you through that. But I do want to caution you against starting your draft without this standards template. Some people just start writing and then trying to reformat it into the template can be extremely difficult. So I really would encourage you to download that and use that as you start your drafting, because it's got all of the styles already built into it. So as you start putting in your information, it will automatically format appropriately, and there'll be very little changes we'll have to make. So that'll help me in the long run. So I would appreciate that. Okay, so here is what you need to do as a project leader in developing your draft. You need to come up with a plan for meeting with your development team. And I know Agathi mentioned that it can be a single person development. And while that is possible, I really would encourage that you have more than one person working on this. If nothing else, a second set of eyes and someone that you can bounce ideas off of, getting some feedback, because regardless of how much of an expert you are in your area, as you're trying to pull it all together, there's always something that you're going to miss. And your team will see that. Your team may not be quite as invested in it as you, and so they're a little more objective sometimes. So I do encourage a team. It doesn't have to be big. It could be 1, 2, 3 more people. I don't think you should have a team that's greater than about 10, because it just gets too many cooks in the kitchen then. So what you want to do is plan some meetings so that you can get together on a regular basis. It's very difficult if you think, oh, well, we'll get to it when we have time. You never get to it. I have many project proposal forms that never got off the ground. They've been approved, but there's no draft. And that is, it's difficult because your committee has been informed that there is a draft in development, and then there's nothing to report on it because nothing's happening. So be intentional about what you're doing. And then keep notes on what actions you take, that you notify the team, that you've planned these dates, what steps do you want to take. Make sure that you make notes during your meetings. Joe said he would do this section, and Sam said he would do this section, and Dolores said she would do this section, and we're all coming together in 2 months to share our information. Keep notes for yourself so you can keep yourself on track. And identify when you want to, when you want to meet those benchmarks. Identify, we'd like to get things done by AIM 2025. We'd like to at least be ready to present to our committee. So if that's your benchmark, if that's your target date, back up. How frequently do you need to meet? Do you need to meet every month? Do you need to meet every other month, every third month? Get it in your calendar so that you're intentional about your development. And again, use the standards template. Another link to it, very important. Once you have a workable draft with your small group of your little development team, then what I would suggest you do is send it as an informal review to your larger committee. Remember, the more eyes on it, the more they're going to see those little holes that you might have just presumed had been filled. And they'll have some questions, and they will say, I didn't quite understand what you were trying to say here. Can you please clarify this? Or again, this formula didn't work. I tried it, it didn't work. Now is the time to address those comments, to have those discussions, and to make your corrections, because An informal review goes nowhere official. If this is an ANSI project especially, ASABE is audited on the project development as well as the steps that we have to take as staff. So we need to document every ballot that we put out, every comment that comes in. And as Agathi said, every comment that comes in on any project must be addressed. You don't have an option. As you know, if you're doing a paper, sometimes some comments are not addressed, I guess. But in standards, we are required to address every single comment. You may not agree with what the commenter is saying, but your resolution, your response is going to be, I don't accept this, and here is why, with your justification. But that is something we are required to document. But if we back up and you are sending out your draft for informal review and people are commenting, we don't have to document that. So you can do it as many times as you want. Now I'm going to give you an example. I had a standard a couple of years ago. Actually, a government person came to me and said, you know, we looked at this, we tried using it, there are some errors in it, and we'd like to help fix it. And I said, okay, great. So I started them on the process. And they wanted to do this within like 4 to 5 months. They wanted to rush this through because they wanted to use it for a government certification project. And what we ended up doing, we had about 10 people on the review committee. And every time the project lead, she would send it out to the committee and she'd say, we're going to meet next month. I need your comments back. And then we'll review the comments. And they did this probably 6 times. It took about 1.5 years. We met very frequently. And every time someone had one more comment, you know, it could be as simple as we need to alphabetize the things in this table, or we need to change how we're saying something. Now let's be consistent throughout. But it went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then when they finally had no more comments come in, we posted it to the official ballot, the one that ANSI will audit. And it sailed right on through. No comments, no problems, everyone approved, and it was published within a month. So that's what you're looking for. Because every time you have those comments, it just extends your process. So I want to really encourage that informal review process. So once your document is ready for balloting, this is when you present it to me in Word using the comment or the ballot template, not the ballot template, I'm sorry, the draft template, the standards draft template. And then I start my process. I post it on the Engage workspace for 30 days. And if it's ANSI, I will post that for public review. And then in order to approve a ballot, you have to have at least 50% of the voting members. Those are the people that are identified in the workspace roster as voters. They are required to respond for it to be valid. If you have 20 voting members on your committee, you need to have 11 people actually vote. If you have 9 people vote and 30 days expires, that ballot failed, because even though those 9 people all said approve, you didn't have the 11 that you needed. So the responses that are counted are approve or disapprove with your provided comments. You cannot disapprove without comments on a required comment template. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you just put disapprove in and you don't provide any comments on the required template, your vote does not count. If you abstain, your vote does not count. It does not count toward this required 50%, or actually just over the 50%. Of the people that voted, let's say 11 people voted, 75% of those responses must be an approved vote for it to be approved. So those are the requirements that we need to meet for a valid ballot in order to approve a standard. And if we don't meet those, the standard was not approved. So after the 30 days, the ballot closes, and the staff will provide you what's called a ballot summary with all of the results, who voted, how many people voted, was it approved, was it not approved, if there were any comments for the development group to review, then all of those are included as well. So we send that out to the entire committee. It's all about transparency for everything. We don't do anything in secret. So here I just wanted to show you the comment template that we post. And this is basically my direction picture. So the comment template, this comes from ISO, and we found this to be really helpful with our national standards as well. All of these sections will expand as needed if you're filling them out. What we ask is that these vertical separations, you do not change them, because we have a special program that will collate the ballot templates coming from Mr. A, Mr. B, and Miss C. And they'll put them all together into one document, and they will order them by the numbered clauses that you've identified. So what you do is you fill this out, you download it from the ballot, you fill it out. Your initials or your last name can go here so we know who's doing this. You put in the clause that you are looking at and reviewing. Let's say it's a definition clause. Let's say 3.6 is the definition term. And then you had difficulties understanding what the definition itself was. So you write that comment in here and say, I didn't quite understand this. Here's how I would like to see it written. What is your proposed change, your resolution? Don't just say, I didn't like what you did, redo it, because that gives us absolutely no idea. You need to tell the people, what was the problem? What do you want to see? This final column is for the project lead to fill out. We're going to be talking about this in a second. As the group decides what the resolution is, the proposal to fix the problem. Let's say Mr. A said, I couldn't understand what you said. I think this is what you meant, and put in the proposal for the change. And then the project lead reads that and says, oh, that's exactly what I meant. And they just say, I have accepted it. I've changed it in the document. Very simple. So the directions are here, and those are available, especially when we have newer people on the committee. I like to just make sure I post that. And this is also available, I believe, on the standards, national standards page. So again, we're in black. So these are the project lead. So if it's ANSI, there's a longer public review period, and you can't take any real action until the ballot, that period closes, the comment period closes. So it's usually 30 days following the close of the ASABE ballot. But you are able to look at the comments and the proposed resolutions, and you can be thinking about that. You can maybe write some proposals down, but we're waiting to see if there are any other comments coming in from the public, because those, as I said before, those have to be addressed as well. So then you will gather your group, because you will be provided with all of the ballot comments in a consolidated list, as I mentioned before, and you need to consider every single submitted comment with your group, and using the track changes in your Word document, you're going to record those changes as your group comes to the resolutions. And then you'll go on to that template where you have the consolidated template, and you will write down what you did. I agreed with this. I made the change as recommended, or I partially agreed with it and I made this adjustment, and then just put in whatever you changed. Copy and paste it into the little box. Again, it will extend as needed. And then when you're all done addressing all of the comments, you send the amended draft with the track changes back to your staff member, and the completed comment resolution form back to your staff member, because my job starts next. You get to take a break. What I will do then is I will send all of the people who commented your marked up draft and your proposed resolutions. I will send a separate email to each of the commenters, and I will give them some specific direction. They are to review all of their comments and the resolutions to their comments only. And they can notify the staff if they approve or disapprove of the resolutions that you are proposing. They are not allowed to look at the comments that, if Mr. A can't look at the comments that Mr. B put in, nor can Mr. A comment on the resolutions provided to Mr. B. They can only comment on their comments and their resolutions. And if they disapprove, they don't like what you're suggesting, then staff will try to arrange a conversation between the project leader and the commenter, because sometimes it could just be a misunderstanding of what you're trying to get across. And you just have to have a conversation and talk it out in order to come up with a resolution that everyone is happy with and everyone understands. Our goal, that consensus, is to reach full resolution by all parties on all of the comments, so that everyone is content. Maybe not completely happy, but content. Now, once the resolutions are met and we've tried to resolve everything, we'll post a second ballot. Let's make an assumption that the first ballot was approved. They had 11 approval votes. It was approved, but it had comments. And there were 3 comments that made technical changes. We don't have to reballot an editorial change. You misspelled this or put a comma here. That doesn't matter. But you changed this formula. That's a technical change. Or you changed the definition. That's a technical change. Or you corrected the reference, the normative reference. That is a technical change. So we will put together a second ballot that will note that you only need to look at what has changed, because everything else has already been approved. And we have what's called a recirculation ballot, which I think is a fabulous tool, because you've already voted on this once. You get to look at it again, but your vote from the first ballot still is valid. You do have the opportunity to vote again if you want to approve it again, or if you saw something in one of the resolutions you did not like, you can vote to disapprove. If you don't vote at all, that's fine too, because your first vote gets transferred to your second ballot. That's a recirculation of, we're recirculating the original that was approved, just giving you the opportunity to look at what has changed. And it might just be 1 or 2 things. And so, I always do that to myself. So if the first ballot was not approved, then a second ballot is open for everything. It's not a recirculation. We will notify you and say, this is a brand new ballot on the original document with some changes. If this is ANSI, we have to go through the same 45-day comment period, public comment period, and posting. And so again, like I told you before, this really extends things because we just have to sit and twiddle our thumbs during that period. And this comment resolution process of gathering the comments, coming to resolution, getting the resolutions approved, and reballoting only those things that have changed can happen as many times as needed. So we really want to avoid that. 2 ballots is more normal. 3 and 4, it gets really ponderous and it lengthens everything, which is why, let's think back when I said, send it out for informal review to your experts again and again and again, because you can just do it on your own time frame. And that takes care of all of your problems before you have to address them officially with ANSI, or even just officially with the ASAB procedures. It really does help everyone. Okay, so let's say that Mr. B made a comment and they tried to resolve it, and Mr. B is just not happy. There've been 2 ballots. He's disapproved each time because while he thought he was happy with the resolution, he really isn't. He's just decided he's just not. He wants it changed, and that's it. He's not going to be satisfied. We'll get together again with the project lead and see if we can work something out. And it's very important that a staff member is present on those calls, because my job is to take notes. I document that this is the 3rd time we've reached out to Mr. B. This is the 3rd time he said, yes, I think this is a good point. And then this is the 3rd time he's voted disapprove on the point he agreed to. I've had that happen. And what we do then is similar to the 30-day recirculation ballot, where we gave everyone the opportunity to change their vote after seeing all of the changes that we've made. We have what's called the review of the comments that can't be resolved, the unresolved commenter, which means that I'm going to send only to the voting members. I'm going to post a ballot to them, and I'm going to give them all of the documentation I made during all of these calls, where Mr. B said, yeah, sure, I'll agree to that. And then he voted against it. And they're going to see what he says and what he does. And they get to vote, yeah, Mr. B just isn't getting it, so we're going to approve it anyway. So this is like the last ditch effort for Mr. B to get his voice heard. And I have had situations like this where the unresolved commenter says, there is no way I'm ever going to change my vote. There's nothing you can do, absolutely nothing you can do to make me happy. And so I put that in to the ballot to let everyone know, Mr. B says there's nothing we can do. And they went, okay, well, we like what we see, so we're going to approve it. And it goes through. Another time I had a ballot that had one unresolved, one person who was dissenting. And so he wrote up all his justification and he posted that. And I sent that out to everyone, posted it to another ballot. And I had enough people change their vote to support him that the ballot died. The document was never published. It never was approved because they decided to go another way based on his justification. They went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I think he's got a point. The project lead was not happy, but such is life sometimes. So there is a process that allows you to really try to work this out. And if it doesn't, okay, let's go with the first one where the gentleman, Mr. B, said, there's nothing you can do to make me happy. And it was approved anyway by the committee. Then what staff does is they go to Mr. B again and say, okay, it's been approved. That's the result. But you have the opportunity to appeal the decision. And there's approximately, I believe, a 2-week window where the dissenting commenter can notify ASABE that they wish to appeal the decision. Now, the thing that is most important here is that the decision to appeal is only based on the process right here. It's based on the process that was provided, not the content of the document. So if the dissenting person wants to argue that the information in the standard is going to be bad, they don't like it, it's already been approved, there's nothing they can do. If the dissenting person comes back and says, I was not given an appropriate amount of time to voice my opinion, then they have to prove that we did something wrong, which is why it's so very, very important that the staff documents every single step that we take, and comments and discussions to try to resolve these things. So the commenter is provided with their instructions and the specific time frame for the response. And if they choose not to appeal the process, that's all they can appeal. If they choose to do that and that 2 weeks passes, then the document is finally considered approved. The appeal issue comes up maybe half a dozen times a year at most, but it really doesn't come up that often. Usually people are able to work things out, luckily. So again, you see it's still all white here. So you've done your bit as project lead and committee members. So now with the final approval, this is where we go back to the oversight committee, the 03 committee, for that final 30-day review of the process to make sure that and validate that we took all of the steps that we needed to according to our procedures. With the project proposal form, did the draft match the project proposal? If the draft kind of veers off from the project proposal, we go back and we make an adjustment to that. So in the final, this matches this. This is what I said what we do. This is what we did, and it's the same thing. We look at the roster of the committee to show the interest area balance to make sure that no more than 50% is of one area or another. I like to keep it down around 30% if possible. And then they check to make sure that all the comments have resolutions and that all of the resolutions were accepted. Or if there were any unresolved comments, they get to see all of the documentation that was shown to the committee, all of the discussions, all of the attempts, all of the opportunity to appeal. And that goes through the 03 committee. Now, if this is a national standard in without ANSI, and 03 has said everything looks great, we all approve this, then it can go straight to publication. And if not, then I fill out a form and send that to ANSI and wait for them to send me the final approval. And this is where I note that the ANSI form that we send in that validates the compliance and the verification of their endorsement. And then as the administrator, I prepare the document for publication, which is generally looking for those missing commas. I look for capitalizations that are consistent. I look for any inconsistency. Sometimes you might spell out the word our, and in other places you might just have HR period. We like to make sure things are consistent throughout. So it's more of an editorial check. If there are any things in your document that don't make sense, sometimes people are making a correction and they leave extra words in there. I will check with you on that as the project lead, unless it's extremely obvious, and make that adjustment as well. And then we notify you when it is published. We also put together a press release, which we post on the website, and we send it out to interested parties, which are, for the most part, a lot of agricultural media outlets. It's all pretty digital now. I'm trying to think. I don't know that we necessarily have any paper magazines or publications that we send to, but a lot of digital online magazines get our press releases talking about a new standard. And then we gather some information from the project lead about the development of the standard and about the standard itself, so that it can be considered for a standards development award. And that is basically the process. So as we finish up, I just want to point out that the standard staff currently has 5 full-time employees with over 50 years of cumulative experience. We've got Scott Cedarquist, who's head of the standards department, Walter Brace, Carla Companion, Sadie Stell, and myself, Jean Walsh. Carla is moving toward retirement, so Sadie will be taking over her areas, which are primarily the MS machinery systems. But I am in charge of the processing, the PRS right now. And then we also have the technical committee expertise. That's all of you. You may not be experienced in standards development or standards writing, but as Agathi said, it's very similar to what you already do for your papers. And you guys have, or men and women, I should say, you have the data, you have the information, and it's important to get it out there. So if you see a need, feel free to talk to us about it. So on the website, we have roster resources to help you out. We have a technical library. We have the standardization procedures. There's a guide to consultants. We have ASABE Engage, which is our information and balloting platform. So we've got a ton of resources. And as I had noted earlier, let me see if I can pull this up here on our website on the National Standards page. We've got all kinds of tools here for you. So stop in, just click on it and see what it says. The ANSI essential requirements are the basic requirements that we need to follow with our procedures. So they're all worked into our procedures right here. This is the basic process. We've got the comment template, some just general information, how to get your roster if you need a roster, how to review and vote on a ballot, how to use the comment template, which was that screen with all the lines and everything that I had up there. We talk about national adoption of ISO, which I don't think you need to worry about right now, but the project proposal form and then the directions. We also have a recognized standards list, which is where a committee may have knowledge of standards done by another standards development organization that they think are really good. And you can, as a committee, decide to review that and approve it as being endorsed, saying, you know, ASTM has this great standard on XYZ widgets that some of you may be interested in. It kind of is a little associated with us, but not fully, but some of us use it and it's really good. And it's just a list pointing people to other great standards, because ASABE, while we do great standards, is not the only standards development organization in the country. There are a lot of good standards organizations out there. And then we have standards development through ASABE, just basically what I went through, and then the standards template that I talked about. And then here you have our names, which if you click on that, it sets up an email and you can see which committees or communities we deal with under here. So if you are in any others, you can easily go and find out who is the standards administrator to help you with that. Let me pull that down. And that is, again, found under national standards. So you pull down publications and standards and national standards right there. And then there are other things found under this. We also are accredited to develop Canadian standards. So that's a whole nother thing I'm not getting into, and international standards that we work with as well. Okay, finishing this up. So I just talked about Engage, our collaborative software. So hopefully all of you have been able to get on to Engage and check that out. If you have not, I'm going to jump back up to my website again. If you log into ASABE, you just go up here to Engage. That will open up a whole new window. And we have right here a link to video tutorials that will walk you through getting yourself set up with your account and finding your committees. And finding your committees is an easy thing. You just pull down this listing. I have all the committees listed, so just don't be intimidated by that. But it just shows your committees, and you just get to jump onto that by selecting. And that has our one over here to PRS. So if you go to workspace, this is where all ballots are found. In the documents section, we have the ballots for different documents, different projects. This 488 is out there right now for maintenance review in 702. And if you go to ballots, you would come down here, and this is the maintenance review for 488. You'd click on it, and it opens up the ballot itself. This is some information, tells you when it closes. Here is the voting, and I am ineligible because I am not a voting member. If you are, then you can go ahead and vote and put in comments. Here are the downloads for all of the documents that you need. And then down here, it tells you who has voted, what their interest areas are. We had 2 abstains, so people probably had no technical expertise in that area. And this is where I would put your ballot summary in this documents, and I would send an email with a link. And a critical thing to know is that if you get an email with a link, you need to log in to the ASABE Engage in order to access the download or respond to the email. Personally, I think it's a pain, but it is what it is. And then we are at the end. Do we have any questions? No questions. Everyone understands this.
Just I want to add, similar to ASAB is a paper template. This standards template also will work. And while say filling these things, if people have some doubt, they can refer to some of the existing latest standards, and they can able to see how that has been developed and the published standard. So just using that as a sort of sample, we can able to fill this thing easily. So that is the thing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.